This is the Lekker Rugby interview.
Welcome to the Lekker interview. My pleasure to welcome back Warren Fortune. We spoke to him last year when he was with the Springboks on the Autumn Nations Tour. And people liked him so much to ask me to ask him to come back. So he said yes. So here we go. Welcome back, Warren. Nice to speak to you again.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, no, it's like I'm actually in the Cape right now. I'm just doing my best not to be blown away. I don't know where this wind comes from. I'm from Pretoria. I don't know this kind of wind. Is it normal?
Yeah, this is normal. You make sure that you have a lamppost or a tree nearby in case the wind blows your way.
I'm watching these chairs on my little balcony here, and I'm just hoping that they're not going to blow away. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, thanks, man. I wanted to talk to you about the Springbok alignment camp about this week that happened. We know last weekend the coaches got together and they had their own little alignment camp. I'm sure there was a lot to talk about with Felix Jones suddenly coming back. I'm sure it was a bit of a surprise to many people, including some of the coaches. And then I wanted to talk to you about what happens in the alignment camp. Firstly, let's talk about the coaches. The announcement of Felix Jones coming back to the Springboks, I mean, it's been welcomed everywhere. But it must have taken a couple of people by surprise. I think most notably probably Jerry Brown or Tony Brown or Jerry Flannery. What you're thinking on that? Where's Felix going to be fitting into this? I know we've talked about this to death, but I always like to hear people's opinions. You're very close to the Springbok camp. Tell me what you think.
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. There was always a speculation of where Felix Jones is going to end up after he left the England squad. But yeah, in terms of the Springboks, it seems like a coaching team is getting a bit congested. But maybe Rassie has that philosophy of more the merrier. I know. He's talked about Felix Jones being maybe in a coordinator role, overseeing specific areas of each coach. So you'll be in communication with each coach and probably seeing if they performing each task that Rassie would like them to be, just so that there's a bit of an alignment between each coach as well. He has plenty of experience. Rassie knows him well. He's been with Rassie for years before he left for England. He's got World Cup successes with South Africa. Yeah, so it seems logical that maybe Rassie wanted him back. Was he knows the systems, he knows the players well, and going forward, maybe it will be interesting to see his relationships grow with Jerry Flannery and Tony Brown as well.
Interesting thing for me is I wanted to know why he left England. I mean, he just started there. The defense was sort of, taking shape. The blitz defense, he was bringing it in. And then clearly him and Steve Borthwick had a bit of a difference of opinion. Let's call it that. Any inside information what went wrong there, or is it still a state secret?
It's still a bit of the state secret. You get the murmurs here there of what's going on. Yeah, maybe a clash of philosophy in terms of Felix Jones heading into that England camp with plenty of success, and maybe it was just a bit of pushback from Borthwick just to try to keep him in line and not change the England team into another book team.
Yeah, interesting thing. Harry Jones that I speak to often, he says Steve Borthwick does not know what a blitz defense is. So when Felix Jones tried to explain it to him, he just couldn't get it. That's quite an interesting take on it. I'm interested to know, maybe you have some information then. When do you think Rassie approached Felix again? Because what was interesting to me, they only announced it the other day. But by that time, Felix was already in South Africa. His family is in South Africa. It looks like he's moving to South Africa, and that doesn't happen overnight. That's something that's been planned for a while. I think Rassie was on the phone last year when Felix was sent back to Ireland to do remote defense coaching. That's what they called it. And started arranging things. Maybe, do you think it's gone back that long? Or do you think this was more of a knee-jerk, almost spur-of-the-moment appointment? I'm quite interested about that.
I think he's been in communication with Rassie for a while. That's just my point of view. I don't want to put words in Rassie's mouth. But yeah, in terms of, I think the moment there was the speculation and the confirmation that Felix Jones was going to leave England, I think Rassie sent out a message to him, and I think discussions was going in place over the last few months. I think Rassie just needed to iron out a few things before bringing in and get feedback from his coaching team as well before he brought Felix Jones back into the system.
I was interested to see if he's going to be a defense coach, an attack coach, or like you said, a coordinator. Where does he fit in with Tony Brown? The Tony Brown way of playing is only now starting to really take hold. Hopefully, it doesn't lead to a clash. You talked about this squad of coaches now getting a little bit unwieldy, a bit big. Maybe it's a bomb squad. You never know. Maybe we've got this bomb squad of coaches. How do you think that those personalities will gel? I'm interested in that because Tony Brown is, is quite a character. Jerry Flannery seems to be a bit more stoic, but still a character. All of these guys have got degrees. Felix Jones and Jerry Flannery, master degrees for that matter. So none of them are anybody's fool. These strong personalities, under a guy like Rassie, who's probably got the strongest personality of them all. Don't you foresee any clashes there? I mean, they can talk it up as much as they want to, but still, it's like letting a fox in the chicken coop, whatever for that matter. It might be akin to that.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, there's big personalities there, and I think that's what makes it work in the Springbok coaching setup. I think there's plenty of clashes over the years between the coaches behind the scenes in terms of getting things right, but it's all for the betterment of the Springboks, and I think that's what works for Rassie. In terms of Felix Jones and Tony Brown. Maybe Felix Jones will be more on the analytical side of things, focusing on stats and where possible, bringing in his expertise. And Tony Brown will be more hands-on approach in terms of coaching going forward. Yeah.
How much of this camp were you allowed to see? Was any media allowed anywhere? We saw some clips of them sitting on medicine balls and doing ab crunches and stuff like that. Nothing of that. You weren't allowed to see anything.
We weren't allowed anywhere near the camp. I don't even think photographers were allowed to go near to get pictures. Well, the bits of images that you do get is all from the Springboks themselves. Yeah.
That's interesting. Rassie looks good, doesn't he? He looks like he lost a bit of weight. His health seems to be on the up. He looks energized. He looks like the old Rassie, and that's not a good sign for the overseas guys. What was your impression of that press conferences that he was on? How did he come across to you?
Yeah, he seemed confident. He seemed in a good mood. He seemed more relaxed than in previous presses over the years, and I think that comes with confidence. I think they spent plenty of time planning ahead for the season, bringing in Felix Jones. They know the schedule. They've been trying to organize another test match as well. So I think the Springboks and South African rugby is in a good space, especially with Rassie's plans going forward.
Talking about that extra test match that they're trying to organize, you mentioned it earlier when we were talking before we started recording. This is the second year after winning a World Cup, the very important year in a World Cup cycle. Number one, why do you say that? And number two, what can we expect from them? There's 15 tests already confirmed. Who are those other tests going to be against? Any ideas? Any news? Any hints?
We know that Barbarians match is penciled in for June 28th. I've seen reports that maybe they're trying to organize a test against Japan, and I think the whole goal for organizing more matches is to try to get more game time for these new players and just continuing where they left off in 2024 when they used a whopping 50 players over that 13 tests. And it's going to be a whole a marriage of these youngsters, new players, and the older guys. And it's going to be an important year for these veterans as well. They are at a certain age, and the coaches will be looking at them and probably seeing if they can still mix it up with the big guns going forward to the next World Cup in 2027.
Well, the Springboks set out a press release that said, the older players were encouraged to share knowledge because they know they might not be around for that long. They're going to play a bit less this year with all the tests. There are going to be more opportunities for different players. You called it a whopping 51 players last year. It's a whopping 80-something players in the alignment camp this year. I mean, it's getting more rather than less. So we saw what happened to Ireland, for example, by not managing their succession planning properly. The aging squad, nobody in line. Take a gamble on a very young fly-off, and look what happened last Saturday against France. Do you think Rassie is aware of that? Is he planning around that? What's your impressions about the Springbok planning for this important year that you're referring to?
Yeah, Rassie knows that his World Cup stalwarts are not going to be around for too long. Maybe another season or two, trying to push them to go to that next World Cup. But he's planning for every eventuality. We've seen older Springboks when they're getting injured, it's taking longer for them to recover. There was concerns over even it's a bit. I think it's closing in on 4 months that he's been out now because of concussion symptoms. I hear he might be coming back in the next few weeks. So Rassie is putting plans in place and trying to have that succession plan if certain players can't recover from injuries or if they just can't perform at that same level that we've seen in the last eight or so years.
What were they doing in those medicine balls? That's quite an interesting thing. I mean, I would fall off that thing straight away and I'll never get up again. What do you think? What's the thing? As we saw Asenati and Tlabakanya on that thing, and that guy looks immensely strong. I mean, it doesn't look like a great athlete, but he's got some serious muscle there.
Yeah, I think it's all about fitness and physique and just trying to see where players are. It's hard for the Springbok coaches to keep track of players when there's such long seasons in Euro C campaigns and playing Champions Cup and stuff like that. So this was their chance to just get their own physiotherapists and doctors to see how players are performing in each tasks. Yeah.
How does that work? I know there's a lot of stories going around that some of the franchises the players are not in the best physical condition. Some of them, the tendency to sort of fall away towards the end of a game is mostly to do with the fact that they're not maybe as fit as they could be or should be. And again, we saw again last week in the game against between France and Ireland, how important conditioning is so that you can keep defending or keep attacking right towards the end. If they do these physical tests now, they spent the first day in the gym. Do they sort of then draw up a baseline and say for argument's sake, the Bulls, listen, Jake, David Kriel is not in shape. You must do something about it. I'm not saying that he isn't. I'm just giving an example. Is that part of what it is? And how open do you think the franchise coaches will be to listening to this kind of feedback? Is there an open enough line, or is there a bit of a tension there?
I'm not sure exactly how the communication flows between the boot camp and the URC teams, but we get the feeling that there's a good communication between Rassie and the franchises. If certain players need certain requirements, I think Rassie will reach out to those coaches and say, maybe this guy needs a bit more game time or maybe a bit more rest in terms of going forward. I think that's what makes South African rugby so successful, is that communication line between, say, the Stormers or the Bulls and Rassie as well. Yeah.
I'm interested in that. For example, let's say we identify a player that we would definitely want him to be a Springbok or become a Springbok, but he's not in the shape that he should be. Who looks then after his conditioning? You know where I'm going with this. There's a reason why I might not be. I'm interested. I hear what you're saying about open communication. From what I heard, it's not that good. Not really. And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We can say all the nice things, but we know what the real situation is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the responsibility is up to the franchises to help. The Springboks can't focus on every aspect of a player's growth. The franchises and provincial level, they have to set certain foundations for a player to grow, and that's the expectation that the Springbok coaches have. So this alignment camps that they've been having, I'm sure the coaches would talk to certain players, maybe give them certain goals that they can work on themselves in the gym, or certain things that they can study to improve the game. And they can take that back to their franchises as well and incorporate that into their game and talk to their provincial franchise coaches on how they can get to that certain level.
I did say it in the beginning. I didn't remind people, you work for Rugby 365. You guys are part of Rugby Pass.
Yeah.
Which is part of World Rugby.
Yeah.
I should have put it into context. So you guys know what you're talking about. That's where I'm going with this. Jan de Koning, that we speak to often. We speak to Angus, we speak to Annemie and all those guys.
Yeah.
What is the story behind Andre Pollard coming to the Bulls? What did you hear? What's the real story? Is it maybe just because of his family now starting to grow? Does he want to come back? And is that a growing trend? Are we going to see more of these overseas Springboks returning home now in the near future? Damien Yolanda and those guys that are getting a bit on in years. They've made their money in Japan, wherever they're playing. Do you think we can expect more of those Springboks to come home?
Yeah, we've seen a trend emerging over the last few years with overseas guys coming back to South Africa. And Andre Pollard is the latest one. And I actually asked Rassie at the presser, what's the advantages of having a player like his caliber coming back, playing amongst the South African teams and playing with South African players. And that's all. You will be able to impart so much knowledge to youngsters in Pretoria and coming through the ranks there at the Bulls as well. And I know I know there's a whole issue about salaries and stuff like that. I'm sure they made room to accommodate his needs and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of that, I think having more expertise and having more experienced players coming back to the country can only benefit our teams at franchise level. We've seen our leader who over the last few seasons have completely revolutionized backline play for the Bulls. I know I know it's a mixed bag when he's at fly off, but at fullback he's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, the coach on the field. Yeah, Jake has said it many times. But what did Rassie say about Pollard? What's the advantages to Rassie of Pollard playing in South Africa? What did he say?
Basically, it's about just having that knowledge, expertise, that experience. Maybe in terms of helping the Bulls, I know Rassie said that having Pollard back at the Bulls is basically the Bulls can be like a Springbok team basically, and that's in terms of building combinations with future players that might be coming into the Springbok camp as well.
Oh, you live in Cape Town, and that's obviously the home of the Stormers. Talk to me about the Stormers. What's happening with the Stormers? I mean, from champions in the first year to finalists in the second year to not so great in the third year and terrible in the last year. I know you've beaten the Bulls. I bow my head, acknowledge the fact that you beat us, and I won't forgive or forget that that easily. But what's happening at the Stormers? Is it time for change? Is it time for a new coaching staff? Is it time for John Dobbs to become director of rugby rather than head coach? What do you think, or are they on the verge of turning it around?
Yeah, there's judging from the fans talking, maybe they felt like Dobson should go into that, like you said, that director and bring in someone in with extra expertise to help him at that head coach level. But I just feel that in terms of game planning going forward for the Stormers, there's an issue there. I know they've won over the last few seasons. We've seen them going with this all-out attacking approach, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it can go horribly against. And we've seen that this season for the Stormers, a little bit more composure in their game. Maybe they've been lacking that experienced heads. They didn't have that Kitsoff or Damon Willemse. They've had quite a few injuries over this last few months. And yeah, I think it's just about reining in and just focusing on what game plan they're going to have going forward. I know we questioned the Sharks game plan over the years. Do they have a game plan and stuff like that? But yeah, it seems like that is filtering down now to the Stormers.
Which is not a good thing. The Sharks now actually do have a game plan. The Stormers don't have one anymore. Harry, my friend, calls it hoofball.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, you play it, and Warwick Galant is either completely brilliant or utterly useless. It's never in between. That's just the way it is. So if you had to say the Stormers season, what would be a good season for them? I mean, I'm not sure. They might still make it to the knockouts, which is probably 7, preferably 7th or higher. Otherwise, you're going to have to go play Leinster in Ireland, in a knockout. Do you think they can make it, or do you think they should just write the season off and look ahead at next year?
I think seeing that they've got no European games, they didn't qualify for the Challenge Cup, so they're free to put all their resources in this remaining games for the United Rugby Championship. And I think just qualifying for the quarterfinals will be the major goal. Once you're in the playoff, anything can happen.
True.
But yeah, So yeah, I think qualifying for that top 8 and maybe a top 7, like you said, you don't want to be playing Leinster in the quarterfinal, and that will assure you to get qualification for the Champions Cup next season as well.
Yeah, you're only playing 6 games or something until the end of May. Whereas the
Yeah,
Bulls still have to go overseas, and hopefully they can beat somebody, or who's they're going to play by your name in the Challenge Cup um, around the 16, and then they have to play. They're playing Leinster now at home, and they're going to play Glasgow away, Munster away. So the Bulls have got a bit more of an uphill battle. The Stormers are actually not in a bad position in terms of maybe not having to draw on their depth so much. The Bulls have run into a lot of injuries. Talking about the Bulls. What's your impressions of the Bulls season so far? I mean, they're doing good compared to last year. I think they were second at this time last year. This year, the third, and Glasgow was third, and this year they second. But it's not the same. The Bulls are not firing on all cylinders this year, don't you think?
yeah. Obviously, being from Cape Town, I focused a lot on the Storms. I'm growing up as a Stormers fan and everything. But obviously, as a South African, you back every South African team when they're playing against foreign teams, and it's just so frustrating sometimes watching the Bulls. You know they're a team that can beat anybody on their day, and they will beat a big team, and then they'll lose the next week against a team that you won't expect. And that's the frustrating part, the consistency that Jake White needs to get his team to get to that championship level, and whether that means bringing in more another player, another playmaker, and we're seeing that with Andre Pollard coming
Mm.
next season. I know playing Valileroux at fly-off was a bit of a mixed bag. I know he comes into first receiver for the Springboks a lot when he's playing at fullback, but playing at starting at number 10 is a whole different ball game. Even if it doesn't matter how experienced you can be, it's just another a level. So yeah, Jake White needs to get that consistency in his team.
Do you think he has what it takes? Not as a coach, but in terms of players, to the players that are in the Bulls setup at the moment, are they the right players? Will they be able to, advance to at least the semi-finals and hopefully to the finals again? Do you think there's enough firepower in that Bulls squad, especially around the number 10, which is a bit of a problematic position at the moment?
Yeah, without the top number 10, I don't think they can get to that final. But if they can get a playmaker that will be firing on all cylinders, they can go all the way. I just feel that if everybody's fit and firing, and if all their stars are fit, we've seen Ronoki out injured, Aurich Low injured. They can beat anybody. They can even challenge for the Champions Cup next season, I feel, because they got quite a bit of depth, and they got up and coming Springboks. Gerard Steenkamp has been brilliant. Walker Lowson is a brilliant scrummager. They've got the forwards. It's just about getting them all fit and firing at the same time.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing now. Those last 20 minutes in the like, I'm a Bull supporter. You just said you're a Stormers supporter. Let's talk about some of the other teams. Talk about the Sharks. I mean, comparing this year to last year, if you want to look at, which I just did with the Bulls, it's like chalk and cheese with the Stormers. I mean, last year I think they were last after 11 rounds, and this year they're
Yeah.
fourth. I mean, they're only 2 points behind the Bulls now. That's a team
Yeah.
that seemed to have, taken on the challenge of transforming, which they have now. They've actually got a game plan now. There's a bit more structure. I always wondered about the relationship between Plumtree and Neil Powell, if there's a bit of a friction there. But things seem to be going swimmingly. I mean, they don't win every time they should win. I mean, the week before against the Lions, what on earth happened at Ellis Park? And then next week at Kings Park, they won, but it still wasn't that convincing. You would have expected more. But at least that's team that seems to be on the up. I mean, they won the Currie Cup, they won the Challenge Cup last year, they've won the South African Shield now. Sorry, pardon me while I'm yawning. And who cares? But I mean, talk to me about the Sharks. What's your impressions of their season? Where do you think they might end up? I think they're going to end up higher than the Bulls, if you honestly ask me.
Yeah, it seems like with the run-up games, maybe the Sharks can realistically push to get above the Bulls. Certain games, again, consistency might be an issue there as well, but they are a different team compared to last season in terms of United Rugby Championship. rugby. And talking about that, you see, people might question certain disadvantages or lapses in concentrations that they have in the team, but yet the trophy cabinet is filling up nicely over the last 12 months. I mean, you say what you want, winning a European trophy in form of the Challenge Cup is quite big. It's and the
Yeah.
Currie Cup, we still value the Currie Cup as well. And being the top South African team in the South African Shield, that speaks volumes of how far John Plumtree has come. And I think his systems that he's putting in place is bearing fruit at the moment. I can only imagine he's hoping that he can have a full Springbok team available to him in that final rounds going into the URC playoffs and the Challenge Cup quarterfinals as well.
I had an interesting thing. Maybe you can confirm this for me. That game they beat the Bulls at Loftus, I was there. I did not enjoy that. But apparently Plumtree was in New Zealand for that game. And David Williams, I think is the name, the attack coach, coached the team for that specific game. And I tell you what, everybody says the Bulls won everything except the scoreboard. Yeah, maybe they did. But damn, that Sharks team, especially that backline, is extremely dangerous. Lorenzo Julius, Lucanio, Ethan Hooker. I mean, that guy's got Springbok written all over him. What do you think of that side of it?
If it's true that Williams had full control of the team in that week, and it was a masterstroke by Plumtree and Neil Powell, I think. And I think they gave glimpses of how to take the Bulls apart with that backline as well, just spreading that ball. And it just shows you what the Sharks are capable of. They've got the players in that backline, and I think that might be the road that Plumtree takes going forward in terms of game plan.
But do they have the players? And I'm asking this tongue in cheek because lo and behold, who was the fullback last week? And Henry Immelman. I mean, everybody at the Bulls was asking, when is Henry Immelman getting a chance to play? And he ends up pitches up at the Sharks. Is current to Benny is at the Sharks. All of them on loan. What does that mean?
Yeah.
How do you loan out your players? I mean, how does that work?
I totally missed that with Immelman being loaned out. It was a shock to me when I read the team announced.
Nobody knew it. No one of them. All caught out. You're right.
Yeah, and I don't know what the reasoning behind that was, but yeah, if it works for the Sharks having him there, maybe it's a test to see if they can sign him for a long-term contract. I don't know what's Immelman's standing with Jake White and the Bulls currently.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows over that? So yeah, in terms of depth, they can only work to the Sharks' advantage having somebody with that experience in their backline.
It's a funny thing to me. Anyone played overseas, played in Scotland, played for Edinburgh, played so well, comes to the Bulls, never gets a chance. Jacob van der Walt played so well in Scotland, played for Scotland for that,
Yeah.
and comes to the Bulls and just doesn't feature. I don't get it. You signed Boeta Chamberlain from the Sharks. You've got him on the books. I don't think he played that badly. And then you use Willie Leroux at 10. Some of the decisions at Loftus don't always make sense to me. What's your impressions of that? I'm going back to the Bulls for a bit.
I think it's all about just trying to give players a good run in a certain position. I don't know if you agree. Maybe Chamberlain wasn't given enough chances, maybe to push through in that number 10 jersey, and the same with Immelman as well. He wasn't given enough chances, and I think maybe it's just trying to get Jake White finding the combinations that he feels going forward. Maybe I was surprised Jacob van der Walt wasn't given more chances, seeing his caliber in that playmaking role. Maybe there's a bit of how can I put it, pushback in terms of how can I put it?
No, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. From what I've heard, and I can't quote anybody, but the Bulls were not impressed with Jaco. They were form.
That's a surprise. Yeah, probably.
So he was a bit of his contract's also not going to be renewed end of June. So probably to make way for Pollard. Somebody's got to pay that bill. So, that's interesting.
And it all depends how much games Pollard is going to get in that number 10.
That's the thing. How many games is he going to be able to? Okay, fine, all right, that makes sense. Guys, let's talk about the Lions. I mean, talk about David and Goliath. I mean, those guys really, when they fire, they play well. When they play badly, they play very badly. Very inconsistent. Their biggest problem is inconsistency. And obviously, they also have a bit of problems with injuries. Henke van Wyk got injured against that game against the Bulls, for example. That put them back the bench for that day. That caught them out a little bit. They had to play Nico Steyn at 10 and then move Johnny Lombard to center. Not the ideal situation. But the point is, there's no depth there. Not really. What is your impressions of the Lions season so far? Are they exceeding expectations? Will they make the top 8? What do you think?
They seem to be in a better position than they were last year. And just looking at their team, like you said, consistency is another issue for them, and shuffling players around in their backline in particular. But one thing they do have is tackle ballers like Morne van der Berg, and they know how to find space. They know how to take, and just having that all-out attacking game works sometimes for you. Like Ivan van der Rooyen says, it's about managing chaos. And sometimes when games are chaotic, they the ones who come through the best. And seeing that if they can bring a bit of more structure into the game and mix it up with a chaotic play, they can be a dangerous force, especially in the playoffs. I don't think some teams would want to play the Lions if they get in the playoff, because it's just so unpredictable. You don't know what team is going to show up on the day.
Yeah, true. I'm going to throw you a curveball now. You watched the game Ireland versus France last weekend. It was an eye-opener. Now, the 7-1 is now suddenly the Le Bomb squad, and there's a couple of other things there. Do you think the French can beat the Springboks now?
That I've heard quite a few people saying that's the biggest game on the Springboks calendar. And the French absolutely annihilated Ireland in all aspects of that game. For me personally, watching
I agree.
That. And if France if they have a fully fit team and they are firing at all cylinders, they can beat the Springboks in Paris, but not in South Africa, I don't think.
How will they beat them? Forward play, back play, the Pond factor. Are they cleverer than us? Is their pack better? Or is their backline better? Where are they better than South Africa? Why do you think they can beat us? Is the rugby IQ better? Where are we weaker than France, and that makes us vulnerable, in your opinion?
If in terms of France beating South Africa, that they will try to make the game loose. I don't think they're going to beat us in terms of packs. I think we're still going to be far superior in terms of pack play. All of players have put in firing, but if they in terms of the Pont and the Tamak, that's going to be their key in terms of breaking the Springboks. They are smart players. They are the brains in a French team and get them firing. And I think when it comes to backline play, I think that's where they can maybe unlock the Springboks in Paris.
Yeah, I tell you what, I was impressed with Luku when he came on in place of Dupont. That guy's a proper scrum half, and there's more of them. Seren and Legaric, there's even more of them, lurking around in France, all being in the unfortunate position of having to play scrum half in the era of Antoine Dupont. They would have walked into any other team, national team for that matter. They're that good.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few people saying that France are having a golden generation in terms of scrum halves, but some of these guys are not getting opportunities because of the Font stature and he's just all-round abilities in their team. And I think Luku showed that against Ireland, how he just totally took Ireland apart with his decision-making and his attacking play.
Interesting thing that worked well for them is their 7-1 bench relied on forwards being able to play in the backline properly. And we saw Jagu playing center. He's a flanker normally. And we were wondering about that. But people told us in our comments, for example, that many of those French forwards were actually backs early in their career. Jagu did play center. Many of them played fullback before. So for them to go back into the back line is not that so much of an adjustment as it would maybe be for Peter Steph to go play in the back line, for that matter. Kocha can, because he was a 7 Springbok maybe. But he's a bit smaller than those guys. So maybe France maybe even have the upper hand in terms of their 7-1 compared to our 7-1.
Yeah, it seems like that forwards on that French bench were a bit more mobile if you compare it to the Springboks. And I know Rassie Erasmus once he said it in the past, he would like to be in that situation where he gets an injury or two in that back line and seeing how the forwards will cope in that back line. But I think it might cause a few problems if we have Peter de Steep or Franco Mostert playing centre or on the wing.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, you said that the game against France end of the year in November is probably going to be the biggest game of the year. But what about Eden Park against the All Blacks? Is that not the biggest game of the year?
You see, you caught me out there. I forgot about the Eden Park.
On the spot.
Yeah, yeah, no, certainly. Every single Springbok All Black test is big, and just looking at New Zealand's record at Eden Park, I know, Rassie has certain accomplishments and targets he sets with his team, and no doubt about it, winning at Eden Park will be a massive target for the Springboks. I know they were going over there to try to get 2 wins, but one win out of 2 would suffice, I think, for the Springboks, and I think that Eden Park test will be a big one.
Well, the All Blacks lost their last, I think, in 1994, and we won their last in 1938. It's almost 100 years ago. Do you still think the All Blacks are still our biggest rival, traditional rival, or do these other teams like France and Ireland, but probably France nowadays, are they growing in stature? Are those games becoming more important, especially seeing that we play our provincial rugby up north now? We know who those players are. We know their names. We saw Stephen Donald this week in New Zealand being a paid pundit, not knowing the names of the French players. I mean, really, come on. Do you think France is maybe, or in Ireland for that matter, is now maybe becoming more of a rival to the Springboks than the All Blacks, or is it still the All Blacks?
Look, the trash talk that's happening between South Africa, Ireland, and France. Sometimes you'll see that rivalry is growing. But going back, South Africa All Blacks will always be number one in terms of South Africans. Just looking at the past, the epic clashes that we've had over the years, especially at Ellis Park, and the certain battles between players, Skalberg and Jerry Collins, if I can think back to that epic Newlands 2005, that one sticks with me a lot. And yeah, just the history and the relationships that we have with New Zealand as well. These are pure rivalry. It seems like you don't need to have trash talk between each other.
Yeah,
it's just that
right.
pure rivalry and respect that we have for each other. And that's what makes it so special. I think that's why it's still the biggest match on the Springboks calendar.
Well, I think the Australians beg to differ. I don't know if they can. 2 tests against Australia in South Africa this year. I mean, Joe Schmidt is still there for the championship, but he's leaving after that.
Yeah.
Do you think Australia will ever be as good as they were in, say, 99 when they won the World Cup, for example? I mean, John Eales and Larkham and those guys. Will they ever go back to those, glory days, or will rugby just sort of fade away in Australia?
We're hoping that doesn't happen, because Australia is also one of our big rivals. And just talking about those players that you talked about, John Eales and Stephen Larkham and George Krieg and Joe Ruff, those are the players I watched when I was a young child, and I was just thinking, wow, Tim Warren was probably the best centre in the world during that stage, and hopefully it hasn't happened. We've been hoping Australia regains that form, but they're just not producing that caliber of players anymore, I think, and that's a big concern for them. Joe Smith leaving, that is a massive blow for Australia. I felt they improved so much on that end of year tour last year when they've nearly beaten Ireland. And yeah, I know they will make it competitive for the British Lions. I still feel the British Lions will be favourites, but they're gonna have a tougher build up going into that Springbok matches than the Springboks, and they'll be they'll be more competitive, but I still think the Springboks will have too much for them, especially at home.
That you brought up the Lions, because I forgot about them a little bit, the British and Irish Lions now. Before this Six Nations, we all thought most of the team was going to be made up of Irish players, and especially with Farrell being the coach there. But after the Six Nations, some of those Irish stars their stars have dimmed a little bit. Suddenly we wonder who's going to be the captain. Is it maybe going to be Maro Itoje now? Who's going to be the fly-off? Is Finn Russell now suddenly back in the pound seats because Sam Prendergast didn't make the cut? Jack Riley's not even, comes off the bench as a 12 or a 15. I wonder what that team's going to look like. And I also see they're going to make a big splash of it when they announce that team now, similar to what Formula One did, a whole big shebang in the O2 Stadium. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that test series, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. With Farrell being coach, when he was announced coach, I think we all were expecting a dominant island presence to be in a British Island team, and Irish Alliance team. But looking at it now, is he really going to be rethinking some of these players Irish players are just not performing, or is it the difference in coaching between him and Eastern, or is that the influence as well? But yeah, I think that if Farrell does go with an all-out Irish team or a strong Irish presence in this team, that's something I think Australia can take advantage of. See, I think Australia took a lot of confidence from that game in Dublin in November, and they'll know that they can beat a team with a lot of Irish players in it.
And don't forget, Joe Schmidt was Ireland's coach for a long time. If anybody knows how to beat Ireland, it's probably going to be Joe Schmidt, and he's Australia's coach. No? Don't forget that. Interesting.
Yeah, so some of the structures that Joe Schmidt put in place are still there, and I think Farrell piggybacked on that success, building his team, and yeah, it's going to be. I feel it's going to be a tight series against the Lions. I think it's going to be a 2-1. It's going to be a 2-1 series.
I agree with you. It's not going to be a walkover.
No.
They're not going to come and beat everything in sight. It's going to be tight. I agree with you. Last question. Six Nations last weekend, this coming weekend. I really, for the first time ever, focused on watching the Six Nations, and I enjoyed it immensely. Especially last weekend, that game against France. I don't have a horse in the race. I just enjoyed the rugby. And we had a bit of a discussion with Harry Jones and Andre Pretorius, where they did a technical analysis, and the way the French played was so clever. They literally neutralized Ireland's strengths. They just made sure that they knew how to play against Ireland. Who do you think is going to win the Six Nations title this weekend? I mean, it's fairly clear, but anything can happen. Do you think France will take it and just, especially with that points difference, I suppose? But for you, is France still the favourites to win the title this weekend?
Yeah, I think they're gonna grab at that trophy. I know sometimes the French can be a bit dramatic and some things can fall apart so quickly for them, but I think they'll be a bit too strong for that Scottish side. I know Scotland can be a hell of a plucky team to play against. They can make life difficult for you as well. But I think France will just have too much firepower, especially it seems they're a lot fitter compared to other Six Nations sides this year as well. And I think they'll take it.
Interesting that you mentioned that they're so I don't want to call it temperamental. Can they repeat that performance against Ireland 2 weekends in a row? Do they have it in them? I mean, not that long ago they lost against England because they just played so badly, not in terms of their game plan or anything, but just basic skills, dropping balls and things like that. Can they do it 2 weeks in a row? Do they have it? Are they that good?
That's a discussion that's popped up a few times in the week. I don't know if you remember the 2019 Rugby World Cup where England had that massive performance against New Zealand in the semi-final, and then Springboks just blew them away in that final. I think it could be a similar thing where a team puts everything in that they've got again in the big game, and then they sort of go off the rails a bit in that second match. But I think they're going to take things safe in this game against Scotland. where they can find space, they'll attack it. But they're going to take their points when it comes on offer, penalties and everything, and try to win that game first before they take Scotland apart.
Okay, great. That was a bit of a meandering conversation, but thank you for that. I enjoyed it. Like a weekend conversation, a bit of everything in there. So thanks, Warren. Appreciate making time for us. And we'll do it again soon.
That's all good. Thanks for having me again, eh?
Thank you. And don't forget, people, forgot to ask you in the beginning, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We need your support. I want to get to 20,000 subscribers pretty soon. So we'll get there. Thank you. Thanks, Warren. Have a good weekend.
This is the Lekker Rugby interview.